Very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Digital Maturity, which brands are giving customers what they want and how, a visible webinar in association with Sitecore. My name's Maura Cuddiford-Jones. I'm Consultant Editor at Visible Marketing, and I'm your moderator this afternoon. Today, we're joined by Director of Kagool, Craig Johnson, and Sitecore Head of Manufacturing for the UK, Nathan Morris. During the event, we're going to take a look at some new research from Kagool, which examines FMCG brands' digital maturity, and look at how you can apply the findings to your customer experience strategies. Just before we start, let me tell you about how you can interact with us today. You're in listen-only mode, but we're always keen to hear any questions or comments you have throughout the session. Please use the questions pane to submit these to us at any time. We're also monitoring a Twitter hashtag, which is hashtag FMCG Maturity. So feel free to interact with us on Twitter as well. Lastly, as always, we're recording the webinar, so you'll be sent a copy to watch on demand or share with colleagues in the next 24 hours. And with that, we'll get started. So hello to Craig and Nathan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nathan, afternoon. Nathan, I think we're kicking off with a bit of context about what Sitecore is and does. So it's over to you.
Thank you, Morag. And good afternoon, everybody. Yes, so before we get into the meat of things with Craig, just a couple of moments in terms of what I see when I'm talking to, and my team are talking to folks, whether they're existing clients and have relationships with Sitecore or not. Typically, this slide sums it up for me in terms of where we are maturity-wise in that digital imperative within marketing. So from a digital marketing perspective, this is essentially the cornerstone for most businesses, if not all businesses, in their digital transformation. There are many established industry analysts with key insights that underscore the importance of digital marketing. And we've got here in terms of Forrester saying the next wave of customer experience will have a profound impact on companies' P&L. Accenture says that digital maturity equals 26% more profitability, 9% more growth, and 9% higher market valuation. And IDC says how companies engage with their customers is what will distinguish the winners from the losers. Ultimately, after a period of time of whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, gold rush within this digital and CX arena that I'm sure everybody sits in one way or another here today, we're at a point of maturity where getting it right really is a necessity to all businesses, and it's a critical time for everybody. Next slide, please. So some of you will have heard of Sitecore, some of you will be using Sitecore, some of you will have never heard of Sitecore. So very briefly, to just point out, if you were to Google us, if you aren't aware, Sitecore is a specialist within this space. And has been for over 20 years. We're a specialist in that we have come from what was, I guess, the cornerstone of all digital stuff. That's the website, the web content management space. But after 20 years, we've got just over around 5,000 brands worldwide. Brands like Volvo, L'Oreal, the AA, and ASOS have put us at the cornerstone of their businesses. And Sitecore's long-term success is based on developing essentially a single platform from a single stack of code, which puts us uniquely in a place where those that do use us don't have necessarily the issues around silos and mismatches. Next slide. And just to work that through further from a Gartner perspective, then I think interestingly, other than the some of the brands I've just mentioned and the length of time that we've sat at the top of that tree, then from a Gartner specifics perspective, if I can put my teeth back in, Gartner's noted us, has been noted as the most highly regarded of all from a Sitecore perspective, a long-term and consistently high marked ranking at the highest, if not higher than everybody from both visionary and delivery perspective. Next slide. So this, if we were doing a poll right now, which we're not going to do, so we can get cracking with Craig in a second, but this for me is our own slide, our version of that well-known digital challenge, the slide that goes around every year that gets busier and busier and busier with more brands fixing more points, problems, for you guys each year. I think the last time I saw it, there was 5,000 or 6,000 different brands on this, but I suspect this is a slide that will ring true for most people on here. If you take from, if you look at where we are in 2019, then you've got a situation where at some point in the past, all businesses decided to get a website, which is really the left-hand side and where we originated from. And then as that business has progressed over that last 10, 15 years, then what we've seen is the business reacting to more and more requirements to keep up with customer expectations. And in doing so, we've had the Office of the CIO created originally, and then the Office of the CMO, and then the Office of the CDO. And then if we all stop and look around for a moment, what we'll probably find is that you've got an array of various different platforms, products, softwares, insourced and outsourced, but with essentially a mismatch of all sorts being plugged into everything and anywhere, and probably questionable about the ultimate output of that online digital experience. So bringing that back to the original point, then it really does come down to, from what the analysts have said, this next wave of digital maturity, of the imperative nature of actually getting it right moving forward. And we move to the final slide before Craig, you can get into the meat of it. So where does Sitecore come in? From a Sitecore perspective, we're essentially bringing it all together. So from a Sitecore platform perspective, it's a single platform, and those companies like the brands that I've already mentioned essentially bring together a practical and accurate approach within our own platform to get it right. So from that, we're quite unique in our ability to integrate content, commerce with data and insights. So essentially, our clients can provide a truly omni-channel experience, and the results from that is contextually spot on, highly relevant and timely messages that become highly resonant to your customers. So essentially, your customers are getting real value out of engaging with you, which I think is the key message from what I hear from my clients, and those that are demonstrating getting it right today, which is probably the minority versus the majority today, are the ones that are breaking down those silos and working together within their own organizations to get that right message at the right time to the right people, to demonstrate real value all of the time. And with that, I will hand over to Craig.
Thank you very much, Nathan. So hi everybody, I'm Craig Johnson. For the last 23 years I've been helping enterprise organizations with their digital strategy. I'm a specialist in digital marketing, and I'm currently a director at Kagool. Now Kagool are a full service digital agency. We assist enterprise organizations with all stages of their digital journey, from digital strategy to developing websites and running their digital marketing activity. And we work exclusively with the Sitecore platform. We work across multiple sectors, and we're proud to work with a wide range of organizations who have got different digital challenges. One of the reasons we've been successful is our strategic partnerships. As well as being a very prominent Sitecore partner, we're also a Google partner, and we're a Google Microsoft partner. And obviously we're very good at what we do. We've had the benefit of being very proud of some of the awards and accolades that we've earned, producing great work for our clients using the Sitecore platform. Today we're here to talk about the Digital Census. The Digital Census aims to provide a snapshot of how different organizations are overcoming their digital challenges. We use it to identify noteworthy activity within a particular sector, and we rank organizations based on the effectiveness of their digital activity. And we end up with a league table which ranks organizations across an industry. Today we're looking at the FMCG marketplace, but in the past we've done similar research in finance, legal, and the automotive sector. And if you want to know a little bit more, you can download a copy of the FMCG census from our website. The URL is there for you. In terms of the FMCG census and our methodology, what we did was we first of all started with a list. And in FMCG, there is the go-to list, which is the top 100 UK FMCG brands produced by the grocer on an annual basis, and this is ranked based on sales. And we looked at those 100 brands, and throughout February, we conducted an awful lot of research onto each of the 100 companies, and we scored their effectiveness based on different aspects of digital marketing. And we collated the statistics from digital tools and other comparative metrics, and we tried to be as objective as possible. And at the end of it, we were able to rank the organizations based on their effectiveness in a league table with an overall score, and we call this the digital maturity score. In terms of what we tested, we looked at 12 different aspects of digital marketing, and we tried to be as holistic as possible and ensure that we looked at customers' journey from start to end. And whilst we were doing it, none of the brands that we surveyed were aware that any of the research was taking place. And the team responsible for completing the research probably compiled over 6,000 measurements as part of the activity. Today, we're here to share some of the insights that we learned about the FMCG sector. We identified a number of different things which you can read in the report, and I've picked out 10 key aspects that we're going to go through today. The first one of which is the fact that many of the FMCG brands in the UK ignore search marketing, and they're very reliant on traditional advertising. Surprisingly, almost half of those surveys didn't take advantage of pay-per-click advertising with the likes of Google and Bing. Now, this is a very cost-effective way to reach customers. It's a way to generate brand awareness and to get highly targeted traffic to your brand website for minimal cost. We estimate that the brands that do take advantage of PPC get an additional 32,000 visitors per month to their website as a result of this activity. Aside from PPC, we found that many of the brands were treating SEO, or search engine optimization, the process of getting your website listed in Google's highly sought after organic rankings. It seemed to be treated as an afterthought. And this is very surprising when you consider that the modern consumer goes to Google whenever they need a question answered in their everyday life. I mean, everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket, and Google's the go-to place where you get your answers. We feel that planning for search marketing, rather than being an afterthought, should be at the center of your content strategy. And I've got a couple of examples here to share with you. We identified hundreds of thousands of users searching the FMCG marketplace. There's an example here for stain removal. So, for example, if I was a brand and I was involved in stain removal, I would want to be listed when anybody searches Google for a stain removal type question. If I could get my brand prominent in the Google rankings whenever somebody had a question that my product could serve, not only would I be likely to get people visiting my website, but also I would be perceived as the market leader. And we found that researching customer behavior like this to find the questions that people ask in the build up to purchasing a product haven't been considered by many of the FMCG marketeers. If people are searching Google for these questions about how to clean their clothes or remove a particular stain, you'd think that they are also asking the same question in social media or in forums. So therefore, if a brand can provide the answer to these questions, it can be very useful for them indeed. The second example, if I was, for example, a tuna brand, it would be folly for me to ignore the amount of people who are searching for tuna recipes, because inevitably when people are searching for these recipes, there's in all likelihood going to be a purchase at the end of it. We were able to identify hundreds of searches per month for tuna recipes. So if my brand sold tuna, I'd want to be prominent there so that when people follow up and want to make that recipe for themselves, that my brand is at the forefront. And we found that a lot of brands, although they've got content, they've not been using search marketing tactics fully to take advantage of this. And we thought that was a huge opportunity that's been missed. Looking forward, we've got a poll which looks at how people are using Google.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Craig. Indeed, we have a poll. Well, it's kind of more like a little quiz, actually. We're going to test your knowledge, audience, and find out what you think. According to Forbes, no quick Googling now, how many searches take place on Google annually? You've got three choices. You have 10 million, 2.4 billion, or 1.2 trillion. Now, Craig, while our hot-fingered audience escape to the internet and see if they can find the correct answer, just from the comments you made there about the sort of things companies should be searching for, do you think brands really understand how consumers use Google?
No, I think there's a bit of a knowledge gap there currently. As we'll touch on in a second, there are two different types of audience. Those people that search for FMCG brands by name. And if you are already at the forefront of a customer's thought and they search for your brand, that's great. They're already a converted customer. But if somebody searches for a question or looks for a piece of information relating to the category rather than the product or the brand name, it indicates that your brand is in front of mind. And I would argue that people should try harder to reach those people rather than relying on the same old people who are already brand advocates and are doing brand searches.
Fantastic. Well, we have a resounding preference for 1.2 trillion, and I have to admit here, Craig, I do not know the answer either. So could you please reveal to us how many people do use searches on Google and how much audience these guys are potentially missing out on?
Well, they're correct. It's 1.2 trillion searches per year on Google. So it's a huge opportunity for brands to take advantage of. And we found that many FMCG brands are not yet thinking about that from a traditional Google perspective.
Fantastic.
And moving on, it's getting even more exciting. Brands, we found, aren't ready for voice search. It's estimated that although 93% of all digital experiences start with a search currently, by the end of next year, it's estimated that 50% of all those searches will be voice search, which is quite outstanding. And many of those will be done without a screen. Millennials in particular are very fond of voice search, and it's their go-to mechanism for finding out information. And to be ready to sort of capitalize on this opportunity, brands should already have a mature SEO strategy in place, because Google's going to use those organic results as the basis for the voice results that it provides. And the technology is getting better all the time, and Google estimates that its own voice search technology is at 92% accuracy. So if brands aren't taking advantage of traditional search marketing, they're certainly not ready to take full advantage of voice search. We ranked the brands in terms of their effectiveness in search marketing and gave them a score based on their presence in organic listings and their use of PPC and a number of other factors. And 25% of the brands were doing a decent job. Allpro, Heinz, Weight Watchers, they will contain a wealth of content that matches the things that users are searching for, and as a result of it, they've got pretty prominent listings in Google. However, many more of the organizations that we surveyed weren't, and we were surprised to see a number of well-known, well-loved, very prominent brands that don't appear very prominently in the results, and the red ones there are the ones that aren't doing particularly well, but I won't single out any today. The second thing that I want to touch on this afternoon is how reliant the top 100 are on their own brand popularity. We talked about this earlier on, just before the poll, but our list includes some well-known brands that have built a reputation and recognition over decades. And this is the main driver for their websites. So in many cases, FMCG brands are spending money and investing in digital marketing to appeal to an audience who already knows who they are. And the vast majority of their audiences are doing brand searches. So they're catering for existing customers rather than new customers. And we think that's a huge missed opportunity. We were staggered at the volume of searches for some particular brands. On a monthly basis, 368,000 searches for Pizza Express, 246,000 searches for Weight Watchers in the United Kingdom alone. What this means is new entrants into the FMCG marketplace who possibly don't have massive budgets and can't invest in TV advertising are at a distinct disadvantage. In terms of brand searches, there's a table there just to show you the top 50 most popular brands as searched for in Google. And we used some of Google data here. And as I say, Weight Watchers and Pizza Express well out in front there, but it was some traditional brands like Thorntons and Cadbury's, obviously very well loved, and a lot of their website audience is coming from people who've got an affinity with those brands and are searching for them by name. And again, it just shows you how readily people will use Google to search for information that they want. The next thing we looked at was mobile readiness, and we were surprised, well, pleasantly surprised to find out that just about all of the audience that we looked at were ready for mobile, and many of which have adopted a mobile first approach. Google says that 61% of users are unlikely to revisit a poor mobile site, and 40% of those will go onto a competitor website instead. It was refreshing to see that 84% of the sites that we looked at were tested and optimized for mobile. From their inception at the discovery phase, mobile had obviously been at the center of their strategy, so it all looks extremely rosy. However, these mobile websites are delivering a very slow experience. In many cases, we found that you could possibly order a product via the Amazon app quicker than you could wait to download the homepage of some of Britain's favourite brands. Many of the homepages were packed with large images and videos that looked great, but had huge file sizes. So whereas they look stunning, many were leaving audiences waiting. And the slowest homepage on a mobile device took 30 seconds to load, which we think is unacceptable given the increasing intolerance that UK FMCG customers have to wait for information on their mobile device. And it's estimated by Google that 53% of people will abandon a website if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. So if you've got a homepage which takes 30 seconds to load, I can't see too many of that audience hanging around. In terms of website speed, there were some notable mentions to McVitie's, Alpro, Richmond and Mars, who not only have got their website set up to be mobile first, but they're delivering a slick experience which loads relatively quickly. But this great performance soon tails off, as you can see from the results here. And as I say, this is all contained in a little bit more detail in the download that you can access from the Kagool website. But you can see there that last 50 all red, getting a score of 0 for their website speed, which we think is unacceptable given the fact that people will readily turn to their smartphone to find out anything. And there's a huge opportunity for improvement from some very well-known brands that are leaders in their field. The next thing we looked at was customer service. And we found that was a relatively weak area for FMCG brands, with only 2 of the organisations that we surveyed scoring full marks. We think that there's a huge opportunity for improvement. We found that the use of chatbots to answer customer queries was extremely rare. This relies on having a body of comprehensive content that matches the frequently asked questions that customers would readily ask. So there's a correlation here between poor search marketing performance and the inability to use chatbots. So by preparing for SEO, you can also prepare for the use of chatbots. And only 3% of the organizations were providing a live chat option for customers, which again doesn't indicate that brands are readily wanting to speak to their audiences. A couple of notable examples though, Purina here had a very clear contact us call to action throughout their website, and they also had live chat functionality, they encouraged email questions, and they've got an extensive array of FAQ content which should answer most of the queries that a customer could have. And they've also got a very prominent telephone number for anybody wanting to make a very old school inquiry about their brand. Another notable mention was Hellman's, who also encouraged customer contact with a very prominent call to action. They also had some noteworthy FAQs and some good content relating to the product, which we thought was a good practice. We found in our research that there's a lot of room for improvement there, but it's good to see those examples providing a mix of different contact mechanisms, whether it be the telephone, email, or a contact us form.
Fantastic, Craig. Well, as the slide would suggest, we're going to have a quick poll, or again, we're going to quiz our lovely audience and discover, apart from those beautiful examples there where you can get in touch with anyone at the click of a button, of the 100 brands that were tested for this survey, how many failed to include a contact us or something like it, a CTA, that would be call to action, in their primary navigation? That would be, you know, pretty upfront. So, I mean, Craig, do brands even think about what they want customers to do next when they're looking at their website?
I think sometimes, because often brands are distanced from their customers, that they rely on retailers. And I know that there are some brands out there, hard to believe it may be, but the inability to contact them is often deliberate. I've worked with brands before who are terrified of a deluge of thousands of queries if they make it very upfront and easy for customers to contact them. In my experience, though, that's very unlikely to happen, but that reluctance is often a driver for making the contact us form difficult to access or hiding the telephone number.
And I mean, I think when companies are nervous about having a deluge of, and it can even be positive comment, but even no good deed goes unpunished. And if you say something nice about a company, they still get torn to bits when somebody doesn't respond and say thanks. That, you know, hopefully automation and things will improve that. But we reckon, according to our lovely audience, that slightly more than 50 would, out of your 100, would be failing to include any way of getting hold of them. Is that about right?
Yeah, the audience are clearly on the ball this afternoon. Yeah, 50% failed to include a prominent contact us call to action or an equivalent within their primary navigation.
Silly billies. Well, let's hear more about what people should be doing.
So in terms of what do the customers want, we unveiled quite a lot of research which indicated that FMCG customers don't necessarily want to speak to a person on the telephone. They want self-service. This is something that the modern consumer has an expectation of. 73% of customers state that they want to solve problems themselves. Again, this relates back to FAQ pages being extremely important. They're very quick and easy to produce. They often get great Google rankings, and they can service customer queries for years, but they're not always a front of mind for marketeers. 53% of the brands we tested have got FAQ pages. Two of the leading brands, though, have got an FAQ button on their websites. But when you go in there, you find that there are no frequently asked questions, and it looks like that area of contact has been neglected by those two brands. We found it surprising that self-service doesn't look as if it's been addressed, and they don't seem to want to encourage customers to submit questions, let alone get answers to the questions that they've got currently. The next thing to point out was that we identified a strong relationship between effective content marketing and digital maturity. The brands that invest the time, the energy, and the resources into great content tend to do particularly well, with 39 of 100 that we surveyed scoring good or excellent for the content that they provide. And this content is evident in search marketing, customer service, social media, email marketing, and video marketing, and it can really bring brands to life. Producing engaging content at least once a week, publishing that on the brand website, and amplifying it across other channels should be very high on the FMCG marketeers to-do list. We identified a couple of examples who are following that ethos. Firstly, Heinz. They've got a wealth of content for users to absorb. It's visually engaging. The text is comprehensive. You can get a detailed brand history. You can get deep product information. And this is complemented by regular updates. And Heinz are one of the few brands that use anchor links to tie different pages together to knit together a useful customer journey for visitors to explore. Now, another example that did particularly well in terms of content was Lenoir, and the Lenoir website was a revelation to me. The product information was complemented by lots of easy to follow tips, FAQs and guides to doing effective laundry. So I've been a lot more effective around the house as a direct result of that experience. The next thing we pointed out was the fact that email marketing tends to be ignored by FMCG marketeers. Now, email is consistently singled out as one of the most effective digital marketing channels. And whilst carrying out this research, we signed up to email updates from the brands that had this facility. Only 15% of the brands that we looked at provided a welcome message within 24 hours. Now, that's a long time to acknowledge that a potential customer who clearly knows your brand is keen to forge a one-to-one bond, opted-in relationship with your brand. It's a long time to keep those people waiting. And of the options that enabled us to subscribe to email marketing, only 7 enabled us to customize what sort of content I would receive via email. And there's an expectation of personalization, which we'll touch on later. A couple of noteworthy examples, one of which was Aunt Bessie's, which provided a quick welcome email and had a variety of different customization options so that I could choose which email marketing messages I received. Pizza Express, again, provided a personalized response and thanked me for opting in. And Whiskers had a clearly planned, coordinated email campaign themed around the first few weeks of a kitten's life. So their email program kept our team updated with all the issues relating to a kitten's growth, and we got weekly updates charting the growth and highlighting useful products, tips and suggestions to assist the owner of a new kitten. And that was a lovely little blend of informative content relating to product information. The next thing to touch on is the fact that video is a missed opportunity for FMCG marketeers. Now, video, according to the stats, accounts for much of the bandwidth consumed in the UK. It's also a very useful SEO tactic. How often do we see YouTube videos featuring very prominently in Google results? What we looked at was the extent to which brands were using video marketing, and we looked to see how many brands were present in YouTube. Now, many brand searches in YouTube bring up unofficial, non-brand owned channels and videos. So if I was an FMCG marketeer, and when somebody searched YouTube, which is the second busiest search engine in the world, I would be horrified if somebody got my brand message, if a customer got my brand messaging from an unofficial source. And we felt that was rather surprising when you see how many of the top 100 are regular TV advertisers. So many of the brands have added their ads to YouTube, but they haven't considered the need for meaningful headlines, rich text-rich descriptions, or the importance of getting engagement to bump those videos up the YouTube results and to get them featured. So they're missing the chance to own their own video brand space, they're missing out on visibility, and they're missing out on engagement from users. And YouTube video in particular is a great way to place impactful calls to action, which could lead to sales, or at the very least, an opted-in relationship with the customer. A couple of notable mentions. Allpro have got a very good YouTube channel. It contains a wealth of content, it's regularly updated, and it features very prominently in the YouTube search results for product-related queries. Red Bull, they astonished us with the regularity to which they updated their YouTube channel. Although it must be said that when we did the research, it was at peak ski season, but their association with extreme sports means that they're providing content on a regular basis, which is engaging for YouTube users. The next thing to look at is another poll. Maura, would you like to introduce that?
Thank you very much, Craig. So this is our final poll/quiz, and this time we are testing your market knowledge. The question is, within 3 years, global online FMCG sales, that's online FMCG sales, are expected to exceed how much? So you've got 250, 300 or 400 billion. So, Craig, it's safe to say it's growing, but what's going to be driving that change?
traditionally people have relied on the traditional supermarkets to help them with their sort of digital e-commerce queries, but there are new entrants into the market. Amazon Basket, who would have thought about 5 years ago that you'd be able to assemble your own basket of goods for very quick delivery at competitive pricing from somebody like Amazon? And then, of course, as we're going to go and look at, many brands enable you to buy direct. So for the first time in history, well-known brands can now forge a direct relationship with the customer and are less reliant on traditional retailers as a result. So those are the two main channels that are interfering with the e-commerce status quo from an FMCG perspective.
Fantastic. So with those channels interfering, is it right that they're driving it up as far as 400 billion, as 73% of our audience would suggest?
Well, we identified 300 billion, so it's very impressive, but not quite as large as the audience have suggested. So within the next 3 years, global online FMCG sales are expected to exceed 300 billion pounds.
Big enough for me. Anyway, just to move on with you, Craig, for the summing up and heading towards the end of the presentation.
Last couple of things to mention. We found that most of the brands are ignoring e-commerce. Half of the FMCG growth is forecast to come from e-commerce, and we found that only 9% of the 100 brands that we looked at are selling direct to consumers. A third of them, though, or just over a third, are doing effective signposting to retailers' websites, and this often enables you to add your favorite product into your favorite supermarket online basket, which is very convenient for the user. But as I've mentioned earlier on, it's sort of reinforces the reliance on traditional retailers, and it's a missed opportunity to gather customer insights and forge that productive one-to-one relationship with audiences. A notable place that you can purchase direct was Lucozade, although you can only buy it in 24 packs only. It's very easy and quick to buy the product, and they make great use of vouchers and discount codes, and they provide a very easy to use e-commerce experience. Twinings, again, you can buy direct. Lots of voucher codes, once again, discounts, and they encourage customers to buy direct. The final thing to look at is social media effectiveness, and we found that was varied. We looked across the 4 leading platforms of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and we were surprised to find that 35% of the brands that we surveyed had social media accounts that hadn't been updated in over a month. So these brands have taken the time to establish a social media presence, they've added engaging content, and for whatever reason, they've left that audience hanging for over a month with no updates. And we thought that, given the fact that it's so quick and easy and low cost to interact with these audiences or tie in with other offline marketing, that this was a huge missed opportunity to forge that important one-to-one relationship with the consumer. And we found that Facebook and Instagram had a very similar pattern, missed opportunities to engage with customers across the board. Notably, booking that trend was Nestle. They've amassed an impressive audience on social media. The content, the messaging, and the imagery was consistent across all platforms, and the posts tend to get great engagement as a result. So now if we look at the top 100 brands in terms of their digital maturity, I'm going to share the overall league table. And it was Allpro, who we've touched on already, who topped our list. Twinings did extremely well. This again was due to great content across all channels. That is very useful to consumers. And Tassimo were another brand that performed well. When we look at the bottom half of the results, it's important to mention that Regina, who are there with a score of 0 at number 100, unfortunately they had no website available when we carried out the testing. So because we couldn't give any marketeers prior warning, it was unfortunate that they were exempt from many of our tests because their website wasn't available. The other thing to draw on then was the fact that we were surprised by the likes of Bold, Fairy and Comfort. Given the search volumes for cleaning related searches, the fact that their product usage is frequently discussed in forums and in social media channels, we were surprised to see those very well-known and loved brands pretty low down our list. And we think this is a great opportunity for one of those brands to step forward and own the digital discussions in this corner of the sector, buying, investing in content marketing and SEO and great video content. So just to finish off, a couple of things that we think that the brands could improve on. Firstly, personalisation. We think that personalisation is an opportunity for FMCG brands to engage audiences. The statistics indicate that customers love personalisation, and there's an expectation that content and offers will be personalized to a user's specific requirements. And we found that that doesn't take place in the FMCG marketplace. Personalization offers a number of different benefits. It'll provide greater engagement. It will nurture quality leads. It'll enable you to fine-tune the user experience. Ultimately, it should enable you to drive more conversions and be able to help consumers to get what they want faster. And ultimately, you should get improved loyalty. Interestingly enough, if you buy from one of the major supermarkets online, you get a very personalized experience that remembers what you've looked at and remembers what you've purchased in previous shopping visits. Second thing that we think is worthy of improvement is looking to provide an omni-channel experience for customers. There's an expectation from customers that there'll be brand consistency across all channels. And the research that we've uncovered indicates that customers, as the days go by, are readily willing to use multiple channels before converting. And ultimately, this is an opportunity to convert in more channels and drive a better relationship with the customer, and therefore more sales as a result. And there's some stats there which indicate that people don't just use one platform. They'll use multiple social media platforms, multiple forums, multiple different searches in Google before researching, whilst researching a purchase. And brands have been highlighted as not providing enough information, which again, that omni-channel experience leads back to failures with regard to content marketing. If we can provide an omni-channel experience, it means that customers are free to convert anywhere, and we can integrate the digital offering with the offline world, whether that be for rewards, offers, store finders, how to use the products, etc. Third thing that we think is worthy of improvement was publishing content that matches people's needs. FMCG marketers should find out what customers want, and then they should sort of back that up with some research. Simple free tools like the Google Keyword Planner will enable you to find out what customers search for, what the search volumes are, and cyclical monthly trends. And then you can use that information to produce insightful FAQs about product, the category, competitors, and product usage, which then becomes the focus of your content marketing strategy across YouTube, social media, and other channels. And then the brands can then make informed decisions and produce content that's got a ready-made audience for them. So an omni-channel content plan that coordinates all of your digital activity is a great way to organize this. And if brands can publish that content strategically, they can elevate their search engine rankings whilst providing a great experience across the channel. And the final thing to point out was combining great content and great commerce together makes for a very easy way to purchase products. We think that reliance on a brand website for e-commerce isn't necessary. What you need to do is bear in mind the brand journey and make it very easy for a customer to go from reading brand information on a brand website to purchasing via their favorite retailer. And wherever possible, it's a great opportunity to introduce sampling or upselling or trialing new products as a result. And it doesn't necessarily mean a branded store for the e-commerce brand. One final example to finish off on was Flora. If you go into the Flora website and you browse their array of recipes or you read their product information, they provide a very seamless way for you to add products to basket in your favorite supermarket. So that's just a few insights from our research.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Craig, and thanks very much, Nathan, for kicking us off. It's been fantastic. Loads of stuff to think about. I've been fascinated hearing about how, to name no names, obviously, the huge range of really what you would consider big blue chip brands really not putting their back into it when it comes to omni-channel content, when it comes to thinking it all the way through. You're finding that FAQs are just not published, like a web designer's given up and gone for lunch, or not using all the social channels, and simply not understanding how to use search. So there's some excellent questions through, and I'd like to just kick off with a few of them. First of all, FMCG is very particular. It's not traditionally direct to consumer. So traditionally found within retailers, people may search for information about it, but it's only in recent times, I think, that people have been necessarily ordering direct and seeking them out direct. Craig, have you come across similar results or challenges in terms of the digital performance in sectors other than FMCG?
The process of disintermediation, i.e. cutting out the middleman, has been present in the digital space for some time. That reliance on a third party is something that's sort of become apparent. If you take other sectors as an example, once upon a time, estate agents were reliant on the regional press to deliver leads for people wanting to sell a home or to purchase a home. Now they've got a direct relationship through setting up their own platform, which is Rightmove. The ability for producers of content, whether it be music as an example, to have a direct relationship without relying on a retailer, that's no longer something new. It looks like FMCG, given the nature of the product, is the latest in a long line of industries that have experienced disintermediation, where the middleman or the retailer is cut out of the process.
Fantastic. And I mean, Nathan, just coming over to you for a sec, in terms of what your clients are doing to meet these challenges, whether it's that disintermediation or whether it's building a new relationship online that wasn't necessarily there. What are your clients having to do to meet these expectations?
I think that one of the biggest things is actually recognizing that what needs to happen is that senior stakeholders, or even boards and execs, need to recognize that they need to fundamentally change the way they operate, and recognize that the way that they operate isn't going to be a one-off project or solution that they do once and tick the box and then move on. Like, for example, Craig's example of some of the brands that have clearly set up whether it's social media, Instagram, Facebook accounts, because they thought it was good to do, and then it's a bad thing to do when they forget to continue using them. I think it's a cultural shift to recognise that this is a must-have moving forward. It's almost certainly the most powerful way to impact the bottom line positively or potentially negatively in any fiscal year moving forward. And in doing so, it's no longer a siloed investment of any size. It's a fundamental shift to say this is how we operate moving forward, and it's a continual journey of testing and improving, and not doing things because you sat in a room and someone thinks it's a good idea, but actually talking to customers and prospects, understanding how they can improve things, and breaking down those silos that have naturally built up based on sort of knee-jerk reactions to market pressures over the last however many years.
Fantastic. I mean, talking about knee-jerk reactions to market pressures, but also to how customers ebb and flow. Certainly on social channels, there have been the core ones, and then new ones spring up and then die just as quickly again. I think perhaps of Vine, which looks like it might be coming back again, in fact. But the report graded brands based on 4 social channels. And as a brand, if we find one channel that works for our audience, should we bother investing heavily in the others? Or actually, that lack of presence, as you've just been talking about, or looking like we've started and then given up halfway through, is that as much going to contribute to a negative experience than just focusing on that key target audience?
We found that most brands are being discussed in some way or another in all channels. So therefore, all brands have actually got a presence, whether it be official or not, in all channels. Relying
You
on one
mentioned,
social
sorry.
media channel is a little bit perilous. Who remembers the dominance of MySpace, or how dominant Yahoo was in the search marketplace? Regrettably, I'm old enough and I've been in the sector that long to remember that only too well. Content is so quick, so easy, so cheap to produce, and so readily distributed, it makes sense from my perspective to ensure that you offer a consistent experience across all channels, rather than ignoring one because of current day demographics or perceptions about the audience that haven't yet been tested.
Fantastic. I mean, Nathan, you also talked about, making sure that you can connect across all the multimedia. Right back at the start of the presentation, when you were talking about this ever expanding menu of things that marketers have to keep on top of, there is that temptation, isn't there, to say, oh, I'm about to splurge on my resources where it's really needed, but I also spin these plates as well. Are there any tactics there where marketers can make sure they are across all the channels to make sure that they have all bases covered without simply exhausting themselves or resources?
I think from what we're seeing is and looking at the next wave of digital architecture, those that are what we're seeing for those that are leading the way in that space is a far more simplistic architecture, and we're looking at we're looking at examples now where those that are winning are looking at creating content where essentially it can be deployed anywhere and it's almost irrelevant what the next thing will be, and moving away from the buying the next plugin or the next API into a particular platform or whatever that happens to be, and either forgetting about updating it or creating a much larger overhead for another team to look after another thing. It's more around rebuilding a new architecture that says, okay, we'll be a slick machine building content that doesn't really matter where it goes, but it will be fit for purpose, which means we recognize things. What will happen in the future is that things will change. That's fact, and those companies, as I said, are leading the way, are the ones that are recognizing that, recognizing the need to change the way that they are set up, and owning that and turning it into a differentiator and opportunity versus head in the sand, and if we get through another year, that's all okay, because that won't be okay. And that's why I think we've seen some pretty big brands fall off their top spots over the last however many years, and it's probably why we'll see similar big brands doing the same in the future. But the great thing is there's not going to be one massive thing that is a game changer. It's a case of we've got to a point of maturity where it will take effort and it will take discipline for businesses to turn around and stop and reflect and address the spaghetti of architecture they have today, and to turn around and say, we will make the effort to get into a happier place that is fit for purpose for now and the future, and own that ourselves. So
Fantastic. One of the things that's interesting to pick up on, you were talking a bit just there about making sure that you have content that's fit for purpose for the future. Craig, you put a point in there about the potential for voice, and as a journalist I've been seeing a lot of articles coming past my desk about whether voice is the future, whether voice is overhyped, whether consumers buy off voice and whether they don't. Depends who you ask, would seem to be the result. But searching for voice, though perhaps very intuitive, and we're all getting used to talking to Alexa, it's different. It's natural language processing. It is a slightly different approach. Are brands preparing for that, even though it is still very, very nascent and there are those naysayers out there?
Yes, some brands are ahead of the curve and are preparing for the way that people use voice-enabled devices. We've identified the fact that due in part due to the personification of voice-enabled search devices, people tend to ask different search queries rather than just put one or two abstract words into Google that they've typed. People tend to ask a very polite question why is this, or what this, or how do I, rather than just sort of some fragmented words. So yeah, we're finding that people use it differently, and some brands are well ahead of the curve, preparing content that matches those queries so that they're going to be very prominent in voice search results in the years ahead.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to move on to our final question then. One of the interesting issues, and this also speaks to the issues of using items like walled gardens, logged in areas, etc. When you're selling direct or not selling direct, such as FMCG finds itself at the moment, how do you measure the success? How do you measure? Is it through email signups? Is it through creating logins? Is it trying to get people to become part of a community? Or are we going back to clicks? How are we going to measure the success of inputting what is indeed investment and effort into building this content and this relationship with customers?
Well, there are a ton of metrics that marketeers can use to evaluate its effectiveness. The beauty of selling direct, of course, is you can evaluate it on a cost per sale, you can look at the basket of goods, and you can evaluate the likelihood of customers coming back for a repeat purchase. But along the line, you can also identify some very useful metrics to identify how many individual users is your brand liaising with, how many direct relationships, usually through email sign up or subscribing to a social media channel. What is the cost of getting that one-to-one relationship? And they can compare those metrics with the metrics that they would get from traditional media, whether that be outdoor, whether that be traditional press advertising or TV advertising, and evaluate it on a cost per user basis. The beauty of digital, of course, is every click is recorded. And if you can't rely on direct sales, then you can at least work out a cost per acquisition and work out how much did it cost for me to establish a direct relationship with a customer who could well be an advocate. So I think it depends on each brand, but thankfully in digital there are many metrics from which to choose.
Fantastic. Nathan, do you have anything to add to Craig's explanation there?
No, well, the only thing I would say is that it's a good question that's going to be personal to every organisation, and it's probably a good question to ask for people to think about. At what point does it become of value? Generally speaking, I think what those organisations that sell via as a wholesaler or via third party, the value of knowing your end client, even if it's via a supermarket or other route, ultimately puts you in control. And if I was responsible for one of those organisations, I'd want to know who's buying from us, who's buying from other people, and would be looking to aim to ensure that every time that individual or group of people wanted to look to purchase again, that they would have my brand at front and centre and see the value in that, versus just reliant on a historical brand name.
Fantastic. That has pretty much all we've got time for this afternoon. It's been a great presentation from both Craig from Kagool and Nathan from Sitecore. This webinar was brought to you by Visible Marketing in association with Sitecore. Once again, the on-demand recording will be sent to you in the next 24 hours. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.